The inheritance. The battlefield was silent. The war had ended, but the scars remained. Captain Alex Mercer stood among the ruins of the once mighty Xylith capital, his boots sinking into the ash-covered ground. The air smelled of burnt metal and lost dreams. For years, humanity had fought against the Xyliths, an advanced alien race that once believed they could crush the humans. But they were wrong. Humanity had won. And now, Alex was nothing more than a soldier left in the aftermath of destruction. As he looked around, his thoughts were interrupted by a gruff voice. "Captain Mercer," said General Kane, a hardened man with cold, calculating eyes. "You have been rewarded for your service." Alex turned to see two guards approaching, dragging something. No, someone. Behind them. A girl. She wasn't human. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, glowing faintly under the dim light. Long, silver hair fell over her shoulders, tangled and dirt-streaked. Her eyes, striking golden orbs, locked onto Alex, unblinking, unreadable. She wore a torn white dress, once elegant but now filthy and torn from war. A metal collar circled her delicate neck, glowing red with tracking technology. "She's yours now," Kane said with a smirk, "one of the last surviving Xyliths. Consider her a gift." Alex felt a strange unease in his chest. A reward. Was this what victory meant? He had fought for survival, for freedom, not for slaves. "She has a name?" Alex asked, his voice flat. Kane shrugged. "She won't speak. Most of them don't anymore. They know they've lost." Alex looked down at the girl. Her wrists were bound, but she did not cower. There was no fear in her expression, only cold defiance. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, but her eyes held a wisdom far beyond her years. "Take her," Kane ordered. "She belongs to you now." Alex hesitated. He didn't want this, but refusing a direct order from Kane was not an option. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Fine. I'll take her." The girl was pushed forward, stumbling slightly before catching herself. She stood upright, her golden eyes still locked onto Alex, studying him. Kane smirked. "Try not to get too attached, Captain. She's still the enemy." With that, the general turned and walked away, leaving Alex alone with the girl. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the distant hum of transport ships taking off. Finally, Alex sighed. "Can you walk?" The girl didn't answer. "All right. Suit yourself." He turned and started walking toward his ship. He expected her to hesitate, to resist, but she followed. Silent, obedient, yet somehow unbroken. Back at his base, Alex led the girl inside his private quarters. The room was small, simple, a bed, a table, and a chair. He gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing, watching him. Alex exhaled sharply. "Look, I don't know what they told you, but I'm not like them." He walked to a cabinet, pulling out a water bottle. He placed it on the table and pushed it toward her. "Drink." She didn't move. Alex ran a hand through his short, dark hair. "You're really not going to talk, huh?" Silence. He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "All right. I get it. You don't trust me. Can't blame you." Still, no reaction. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, she reached for the bottle. Her fingers, slender and delicate, trembled slightly as she unscrewed the cap. She took a small sip, then another. Alex watched her carefully. Something about her didn't make sense. If she was truly a slave, why did she look at him like an equal? "What's your name?" He tried again. She hesitated then. In a voice so soft it was almost a whisper, she spoke. "Lyra." Alex straightened. It was the first time she had acknowledged him. "Well, Lyra," he said slowly, "you're free to stay here. I won't hurt you." She said nothing, but this time, her golden eyes flickered with something new. Not fear, not gratitude. Something else. A secret. Alex didn't know it yet, but his life was about to change forever. Silent resistance. The days passed in uneasy silence. Captain Alex Mercer, once a hero of the Galactic War, now found himself living with the very embodiment of what humanity had tried to destroy. Liara, the alien girl with eyes full of defiance and sorrow. She spoke no more after that first whispered introduction. Her name, Liara, was the only gift she had offered him. Since then, she moved through his small quarters like a ghost, silent, careful, and always watching. Alex tried to ignore the feeling crawling under his skin, but it was impossible. There was something unsettling about her presence, not fear, but a constant reminder of what the war had cost both sides. The unsettling quiet begins. It started small. The first incident seemed like nothing. One night, while Alex was reviewing mission reports, the lights in his room flickered, just for a second. The ship's systems were old. It could have been a glitch. But then, the next day, his comm device powered down without warning. His encrypted military files were corrupted. A strange symbol flashed across his screen for a moment, a spiral of alien glyphs, and then disappeared. Was it sabotage? Alex didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was just paranoia. Maybe the stress of war was finally getting to him. But deep down, a cold realization crept into his thoughts. Liara was doing something. A tense confrontation. That night, he couldn't sleep. The strange malfunctions gnawed at him. His instincts told him she was involved. Yet every time he looked at her, she was quiet, calm, her expression unreadable. Until he caught her. It was late. The cold hum of the station echoed through the metal walls, and Alex, restless, wandered into the main room. That's when he saw her, kneeling near the corner of the room, her hands lightly hovering above the ground. Whispers filled the air. Not loud, not clear, just whispers. A language that twisted and bent around his mind, soft yet sharp like glass cutting through silence. Alex froze, heart pounding in his chest. Liara. His voice was rough, breaking the quiet like a hammer on glass. Her head jerked up. For the first time, fear flashed across her golden eyes. But just as quickly, it disappeared, replaced by the cold wall she always wore around herself. "What were you doing?" Alex demanded. She didn't answer. He took a step forward, his hand resting on the sidearm at his belt, not out of aggression but caution. "You messing with the systems. You trying to contact someone." Still, she said nothing. But her silence was an answer. Alex ran a hand down his face, tension burning through his shoulders. "Look, I don't want trouble. But I need to know, are you trying to sabotage my ship?" A beat of silence. Then she whispered, so softly he almost didn't hear it. "They're coming." His stomach twisted. "Who's coming?" She looked up, her expression blank, but her eyes burned with something ancient and terrifying. "You'll see." The signs grow stronger. The next few days were worse. Doors began locking on their own. His ship's navigation systems kept rerouting his planned destinations. Messages meant for his superiors were either delayed or never sent. But it wasn't just the technology acting strange. It was the atmosphere itself. The air in the ship felt heavy, thick with something unnatural. Shadows seemed to linger a little too long in the corners. Alex started having vivid nightmares, visions of fire and screams, of vast alien ships blotting out the stars. Each time he woke, Liara was there, not close, just standing at the far end of the room, watching him with those glowing eyes, a hidden talent unleashed. One night, everything changed. Alex received an emergency call, a distress signal from a nearby human outpost. Without hesitation, he launched his ship and raced toward the source. The outpost was under attack, but not by any known enemy. The attackers were machines, unmarked, silent, and deadly. They weren't Xylith technology. This was something entirely different. Alex engaged in battle, but he was outnumbered. Laser blasts shook the ship as alarms blared. The outpost was burning, and Alex knew this would be his final stand. And then it happened. Liara stepped forward. Without speaking, without hesitation, she placed her hand on the ship's control panel. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever before. Suddenly, every system came alive. Sharper, faster, stronger. Weapons auto-locked on targets with deadly precision. Shields flared with newfound energy. Alex watched, stunned, as Liara unleashed a power he had never seen before. In moments, the attackers were destroyed. The ship fell silent once more. Alex turned to her, his breath shallow. What the hell was that? She stared at him, her voice low and cold. You think you won the war, Captain, but you don't know what you've awakened. A new suspicion grows. That night, as the outpost's ruins burned in the distance, Alex sat alone with Liara. The fear in his chest was no longer about the past. It was about the future. Who was she really? What power did she hold? And most terrifying of all, what was coming next? The silence between them was no longer peaceful. It was the heavy silence of a secret too dangerous to be spoken aloud. The hidden power. The ship drifted silently through the cold void of space, carrying the weight of something far heavier than gravity. Fear of the unknown. Captain Alex Mercer couldn't sleep. His mind replayed the same scene over and over. Liara standing at the ship's console, her eyes glowing like burning stars, wielding a power no human could comprehend. He leaned against the cold metal wall of his quarters, rubbing his temples. The war had ended, but this felt like something new. Something worse. What was she? The question that won't go away. The next morning, Alex couldn't hold back any longer. He found Liara sitting quietly in the corner of the small lounge area, staring out at the endless stretch of stars. She looked peaceful, almost human, except for those unsettling golden eyes that never seemed to blink. "Hey," Alex said, voice tight. No response. He stepped closer. "You're going to answer me this time. What happened back there? How did you do that?" Her gaze didn't shift. It was like she wasn't even there, her body present, but her mind lost somewhere far beyond human understanding. Frustration burned through him. He slammed his fist against the table, making the metal rattle. "Talk to me, Liara." Slowly, she turned to face him. And when she spoke, her voice was like ice. It wasn't supposed to happen this soon. Alex blinked. What wasn't supposed to happen? You saved us. Those machines were going to kill everyone. What did you do? Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, there was something close to fear in her expression. "I didn't save you," she whispered. "I woke something up." Echoes in the darkness. That night, strange things began to stir in the ship. Alex lay awake, staring at the ceiling, when the room temperature suddenly dropped. Frost crawled along the edges of the window, despite the controlled atmosphere of the ship. Whispers. They seeped into his mind, voices in a language he didn't understand, low murmurs that crawled beneath his skin like spiders. He sat up quickly, breathing hard. His heart raced as shadows moved unnaturally across the walls. And then, the lights died. Total darkness swallowed the room, except for one faint glow. Liara. She stood at the doorway, her eyes blazing with an unnatural golden fire. But it wasn't fear that gripped Alex. It was the feeling that she wasn't alone. Something else was here, something ancient and cold, watching from the dark. "Liara," Alex said, his voice shaking. "What's happening to my ship?" Her voice was distant, hollow. "They're calling back." "Who's calling back?" Her head tilted slowly. "The ones who were here before the war. Before humanity ever looked at the stars." Uncovering the truth. Determined to get answers, Alex dove into his ship's encrypted archives the next morning. He wasn't supposed to access restricted war files, but he didn't care anymore. He needed to know what humanity really did to the Ziliths. Hours passed as Alex searched through classified reports. What he found made his blood run cold. The Ziliths weren't just another alien race defeated in battle. They were guardians of something ancient, something buried deep within the stars, a force older than both humanity and the Ziliths combined. And humanity didn't just win the war. They shattered a balance that had existed for eons. The machines attacking the outpost weren't just weapons. They were warnings. The power unleashed. Alex confronted Lyra that evening, heart heavy with realization. You weren't trying to sabotage the ship, were you? His voice was low, almost broken. You were trying to protect it. Lyra didn't speak at first. Then, quietly, she nodded. They're not machines, she whispered. They're sentinels. They were meant to keep humanity away from what lies beyond the veil. Alex felt cold seep into his bones. And now that the war's over, they're coming for us. Lyra finally turned to him fully, her golden eyes burning with a fierce, unnatural light. They're not coming for us, Alex, she said. They're coming for you. Humanity broke the seal. They'll burn your worlds to ash until the balance is restored. A glimpse of power. Suddenly, alarms blared through the ship. An enemy vessel had breached their perimeter. Alex sprinted to the control deck, Lyra following silently behind him. As he activated the defense systems, the ship's sensors showed something terrifying. It wasn't a human ship. It wasn't Xylith. It was something else. The enemy ship didn't move like anything Alex had ever seen. It hovered in complete silence, its surface shifting like liquid metal. No weapons, no signals, just pure, watching intelligence. Alex fired the first shot, but the blast disappeared into nothingness. The ship didn't flinch, and then Lyra stepped forward. Her eyes blazed gold again, brighter than before. She placed her hand on the control console, and a pulse of strange, ancient energy surged through the ship. Boom! The enemy ship reeled as Lyra's energy shot across the void, striking it with power that wasn't human, wasn't natural. Alex watched in stunned silence as the ship retreated into the darkness of space, the burden of power. After the battle, the ship fell eerily quiet again. Alex turned to Lyra, shaken to his core. "What are you?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. She looked at him, her expression weary, like she carried the weight of a dying universe. "I'm not your enemy, Captain," she said softly. "But soon, I might be your only hope." Alex stared at her, realization dawning. This wasn't just about the war anymore. Something far older and far more dangerous was waking up. And Lyra, she wasn't just a survivor of the Ziliths. She was the key to stopping humanity's greatest mistake, the escape plan. The hum of the ship's engines echoed like a heartbeat through the cold metal walls. Captain Alex Mercer sat in silence, staring out the window into the endless void of space. Stars blinked in the distance, distant and indifferent, silent witnesses to humanity's greatest mistake. The battle with the unknown ship haunted his every thought. The way it had absorbed their weapons, the terrifying, fluid grace of its movements, and most of all, Lyra's power. The alien girl, once seen as a defeated enemy, was something far more. And that truth was more terrifying than anything Alex had faced in the war. But nothing could prepare him for what was coming next. A hidden conversation. Alex found Lyra standing by the observation window, her silver hair shimmering under the artificial light. Her gaze was distant, lost in the endless sea of stars. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. "I deserve answers," Alex said, voice low but steady. "You knew that ship wasn't human, or Xylith. You knew what it was." Lyra didn't look at him. Her voice was soft, like the echo of a memory. "They were never meant to wake up." Alex's jaw tightened. "Who are they?" Finally, she turned to face him. For the first time, there was no defiance in her eyes, only sorrow. "They're called the Harbingers. Ancient machines left behind by something older than my people, older than yours. They were built to protect the balance of the universe, to guard what should never be disturbed." Alex swallowed hard. "And humanity." We disturbed it. Liara nodded. When your armies invaded Xylith space, you didn't just conquer us. You broke a seal that was never meant to be touched. My people were the last guardians of that seal. Now, it's open. A secret too big to ignore. Alex paced the room, the weight of Liara's words pressing on him like gravity itself. So, you're saying those things, those harbingers, are coming for us. Not just coming, Liara whispered. They're already here, and soon they'll destroy everything your kind has built. Alex stopped pacing, staring at her. Then we need to warn Command. They need to know. Liara's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. No, you can't trust them. Alex frowned. What do you mean? Liara's expression turned cold, her voice sharp with urgency. Your leaders, they knew. They knew about the seal. They knew what they were unleashing when they attacked my world. They didn't care. Alex's stomach twisted. No, that can't be true. They wanted the power beneath the seal, Liara continued. They thought they could control it. But they were wrong. And now, they'll do anything to cover it up, even if it means letting humanity burn. The message that changed everything. Before Alex could respond, a loud beep echoed through the ship. Incoming transmission. Alex moved quickly to the control console, accepting the call. A holographic image of General Kane flickered into view, his face cold, emotionless, and every bit as calculating as Alex remembered. Captain Mercer, Kane said in a tone that left no room for argument, return to headquarters immediately. You're carrying sensitive cargo. It's time we took that alien off your hands. Alex's blood ran cold. Sensitive cargo. She's not. Don't play dumb, Mercer. We know what she is. And we know she's been influencing your ship's systems. Alex clenched his fists. General, you don't understand. She's not a threat. She's a warning. We need to listen to her before it's too late. Kane's face darkened. That's an order, Captain. If you refuse, you'll be branded a traitor. The transmission cut out. Alex turned to Lara, his heart racing. We have to go. Now, the escape begins. Alex rushed to the ship's control panel, overriding the security locks and setting a new course, away from headquarters. Why are you helping me? Lara asked, her voice laced with disbelief. Alex didn't look at her. Because I fought for humanity's survival. I didn't fight to cover up their mistakes. Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared. A fleet of human warships had appeared on the radar, blocking every escape route. They're trying to trap us, Alex growled. Lara placed a hand on his shoulder. Let me help. Alex hesitated for a moment before nodding. Do it. Liara closed her eyes, and the room was filled with a sudden pulse of energy. The ship's systems responded instantly, faster, stronger than Alex had ever seen before. Hang on, Alex muttered, gripping the controls tightly. The ship lurched forward, cutting through space like a blade. Alarms screamed as missiles locked onto their position. We're not going to make it, Alex shouted. Liara's eyes opened, burning gold with raw power. We will. The narrow escape. As the missiles closed in, Lara extended her hands toward the control panel, unleashing a wave of pure energy. The ship's shields flared brightly, absorbing the impact as they sped through the blockade. The enemy ships were left behind in a flash of light. Silence returned. Alex leaned back, breathless. You saved us again. Lara's voice was weak, her energy drained. Not for long. They'll keep coming. The truth unfolds. Later that night, as they drifted through uncharted space, Alex confronted the reality of their situation. We need to find somewhere safe, Alex said. A place where we can regroup and figure out how to stop this. Liara's expression was grim. There's nowhere safe, Captain. Not from them. Alex leaned in closer. Then what do we do? Lara hesitated before finally whispering the terrifying truth. We need to go back to the Zilith homeworld. The answer is there. The seal, it can still be closed. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. Then that's where we'll go. But deep down, he knew this wasn't just about saving humanity anymore. This was about stopping the end of everything. The enemy within. The stars outside the ship glowed softly, like distant beacons of hope in the vast emptiness of space. But Captain Alex Mercer felt anything but hopeful as he navigated through the quiet corridors of the ship. There was a heavy weight in the air, something both strange and suffocating. Despite Lyara's assurances that they were safe for the moment, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against something far worse than he could comprehend. The escape from the human fleet had been close, too close. He had hoped for some time to regroup, to think, but he knew in his gut that the truth was much darker. The Harbingers weren't just machines from another time. They were the result of humanity's arrogance, a force built to prevent this from ever happening. And now, Lyra was his only ally in stopping it. But even she couldn't hide what was coming. A message from the past. Alex sat down at the command console, trying to focus on the mission at hand. There had to be a way to stop the Harbingers. There had to be a way to put things right. Suddenly, his console flashed with an encrypted transmission, one he hadn't initiated. It was a secure military channel. His stomach dropped as he recognized the sender's name. General Kane. Against his better judgment, Alex accepted the call, his fingers shaking. Kane's face flickered into view, his expression stern as ever. "Mercer," Kane said coldly, "I'm giving you one last chance to return to the fold. You're on the run, and you know it. You've compromised everything. You've broken your loyalty to humanity. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Alex's jaw clenched. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. The truth, Kane. The truth about what we unleashed." Kane's eyes narrowed. "You think you're the only one who understands the stakes here? You're in over your head, Mercer. There's more to this than you'll ever know. If you value your life, I suggest you return now. I won't give you another warning." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Alex with a cold sense of dread gnawing at him. He had heard the threat in Kane's voice. It was more than just a warning. There was something in his tone that suggested he knew more than he was letting on. An unlikely visitor. As Alex brooded over the call, a soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. He turned, and there she was, Lyra, standing in the doorway. Her eyes were still a piercing gold, but there was a deep sadness in them that hadn't been there before. "You're thinking about Kane, aren't you?" Lyra's voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension in the room. Alex didn't respond immediately. Instead, he motioned for her to sit down beside him. He was tired of running, tired of feeling like he was losing control of everything he once knew. Kane said something in the transmission. Alex said after a long pause, "He knows something, more than he's letting on. I don't trust him, but I know he's hiding something from me." Lyra sat down, her eyes still distant as if she were looking past him, seeing something far beyond the walls of the ship. "Kane's not the only one hiding things. I'm sure you already figured that out." Alex frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned her gaze to meet his. "You know that humanity didn't just go to war with my people, don't you? There's something far bigger going on here, something you were never meant to know." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" Lyra took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. "The Ziliths were never just soldiers. We were the last of a long line of guardians. The Harbingers, they were always meant to prevent a disaster. And that disaster is linked to the humans. Your species." Alex stood up, his mind racing. "What does that mean? What does that have to do with us?" "The truth is," Lyra hesitated, struggling to find the words. "The Harbingers weren't just left behind by the ancients to guard the seal. They were created to stop humanity from becoming what you were meant to be." Alex stared at her, unable to grasp the magnitude of what she was saying. "Stop humanity from what?" What were we meant to be? Lyra's eyes darkened as she spoke the words that Alex feared would haunt him forever. You were meant to remain in your infancy. In the beginning, humanity was never supposed to rise above a certain point. You were supposed to be kept in check. The revelation. Alex sat down heavily in the chair, his thoughts spiraling. He had fought for humanity's survival, had bled for it. To hear that their very existence was a mistake, that they were never meant to be what they were now, was too much to process. Lyra continued, her voice a mixture of sadness and urgency. When your species began to break through the barriers of space, when you started to challenge other civilizations, the harbingers were activated. The balance was always meant to remain. The ancient ones, whoever they were, created the harbingers to ensure no species, not even yours, would threaten the natural order. Alex's mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. You're saying that the war, the destruction, everything we've done since the first step into space, was a mistake. Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, the seal was meant to contain humanity's rise. It was never meant to be broken. Alex felt his chest tighten. But we did break it. Lyra's gaze was hard now, like a mirror reflecting the harsh truth. And now the harbingers will come for you. They'll come for all of humanity. You cannot fight them. No weapons will work. Nothing you've built will stand against them. You've unleashed a force greater than anything your species can imagine. The enemy within. A chilling silence settled over the room. Alex looked at Lyra, her golden eyes now filled with a fierce resolve. So, what do we do now? How do we stop them? Lyra's voice was soft but resolute. We don't stop them. We can't. But we can hide. The only chance humanity has left is to hide from the harbingers, to make them believe that your species has been wiped out. We have to disappear. Alex shook his head. You can't be serious. We'll never survive out there on our own. The galaxy will never let us hide forever. She looked at him, the weight of centuries behind her gaze. Then you have to decide what kind of future you want. Alex, you can either let humanity burn, or you can ensure that it survives, even if it means becoming ghosts in the dark. Alex's mind churned, a storm of thoughts crashing into him. He had always believed that humanity could overcome anything. But now, the very existence of his species was in question. And the hardest part was realizing he might not have a choice. The reality of their situation hit him like a tidal wave. Humanity was on the brink of extinction, and the very people he had trusted to protect them were the ones who had caused this disaster. The true enemy, the one they had been fighting all along, was not the Ziliths or the harbingers. It was the corruption within his own people. And with that realization came a terrifying question. Was humanity even worth saving? The final betrayal. The hum of the ship's engines had become a familiar sound, almost like a lullaby lulling Alex into a false sense of security. Yet, the tension in the air was palpable. The ship was adrift, no longer part of the larger galactic conflict, but a fragile existence floating in space, fugitives from both their enemies and their own kind. The reality was settling in. Alex had always believed in the strength and resilience of humanity. He had fought for it, bled for it, and had nearly died for it. But now, after hearing Lyra's revelations, the very foundation of everything he'd believed in was crumbling. The war he had fought for, the mission he had dedicated his life to, it all seemed like a lie. Humanity wasn't the noble force he'd thought it was. It had been part of a larger, darker game manipulated from the beginning. And as if things couldn't get worse, the shadows of betrayal were creeping closer. A familiar voice. Alex sat in the cockpit of the ship, staring out at the cold, endless void. His mind was still reeling from Lyra's words. She had given him one clear directive: survive. But now, the challenge wasn't just the harbingers. It was the insidious corruption that ran deep within the heart of humanity. The very ones who had sent him on this mission in the first place were the ones who had set everything in motion. The soft chirp of his comm system interrupted his thoughts. It was a secure military signal. Alex's blood ran cold as he read the name on the display, Lieutenant Garrick. His heart skipped a beat. Garrick had been his right-hand man in the war, someone Alex had trusted implicitly. They had fought side by side through countless battles. But now, after everything that had happened, he wasn't sure who he could trust anymore. Against his better judgment, Alex opened the transmission. Garrick's face appeared, but it wasn't the friendly, confident face he remembered. This time, there was something dark behind his eyes, something that set Alex's nerves on edge. "Captain Mercer," Garrick's voice was strained, his words laced with urgency. "You need to come back. It's not what you think. The war isn't over, and you're making a grave mistake." Alex's jaw tightened. "What's going on, Garrick? What do you mean? Not what I think." Garrick glanced around nervously, as if checking for eavesdroppers. "There's something happening behind the scenes, something even higher up than General Kane. There's a faction in command, and they've been manipulating the war. The Harbingers, Lyra. This was all part of a bigger plan to test humanity's ability to adapt, to push us to the brink and see how we would respond." Alex could barely process the words. "You're telling me this is all some kind of experiment? That people's lives, countless lives, were just pawns in a game?" Garrick's face grew more serious. "Yes, but it's more than that. They've been watching, and they know what you've learned. They know about the seal, the balance. The worst part, they're planning to use the Harbingers for their own ends. And now they've set their sights on you. A choice that could end everything." Alex's stomach twisted in disbelief. "What do you want me to do, Garrick? Return and be a part of this? Turn my back on everything I fought for?" There was a pause on the other end of the transmission, and then Garrick spoke again, his voice heavy with regret. "I'm trying to help you, Alex. I don't want this either, but they've made it clear. If you don't come back now, there's no going back for you. They'll come after you and Lyra with everything they have." Alex could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. In that moment, he realized that his trust had been shattered. Garrick, his old friend, had just revealed the truth. There was no safe place anymore. There were no clear sides, no easy answers. It was all a war of shadows, and a line between good and evil had blurred beyond recognition. "I can't come back, Garrick. You don't understand. I've seen what humanity is capable of. This war, it wasn't about survival. It was about control, about power, and I'm done being a part of it." Alex's voice hardened, his resolve solidifying like steel. "Alex, you don't know what you're dealing with." Garrick's voice cracked. "You think the Harbingers are the real threat. You haven't seen what's behind them, what's been controlling everything." Before Alex could respond, Garrick's image flickered out. The transmission was cut, leaving him in a cold silence. Alex stood there, his heart pounding. His mind raced with 1,000 questions, but one thing was clear: he couldn't trust anyone anymore. His friend, his ally, had betrayed him, just like everyone else. His own government was manipulating him, pulling the strings from the shadows. Betrayed by those he trusted. As the comm screen went dark, Alex's mind flashed to his final conversation with Lyra. She had warned him. She had told him not to trust anyone, not even his own people. But this was more than just a betrayal. This was a revelation that everything he had been fighting for had been orchestrated from the beginning. His very existence had been a test, a tool for something far more sinister. Alex turned to face Lyra, who had been silently observing from across the room. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed the sadness she felt for him. She had seen this coming. "They're using you, Alex," Lyra said softly, her voice heavy with sympathy. "They never cared about saving humanity. They only cared about testing your species, pushing you to the brink. And now, they've come for you." Alex closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the words settle in his chest. "I don't know what to do anymore, Lyra. They're everywhere. Everyone I've trusted, everyone I've fought for. It was all a lie. Liara stood, walking toward him with a measured grace. You have a choice, a difficult one. You can keep running, keep hiding, and hope to outrun them. Or you can fight, but you'll need more than just me. You'll need the truth, all of it. Alex met her gaze, his mind torn between despair and a flicker of hope. The truth was the key. The truth about humanity's betrayal, the truth about the Harbingers, and the truth about what Liara had been hiding all along. But the choice was clear now. If he wanted to survive, he had to choose a side. And that side could no longer be humanity, at least not in the form he had known it. The path forward. In the following days, Alex's resolve hardened. He would take the fight to the heart of the corruption, to the very core of humanity's deception. He would make them pay for what they had done. But first, he would need to learn everything there was to know about the Harbingers. He needed to understand their true purpose, and what they wanted with humanity. Because if there was one thing Alex was certain of now, it was this: the real war had only just begun. The Harbingers weren't just a threat to humanity's survival. They were the key to understanding the true nature of this galactic conflict, and Alex was determined to uncover every secret, no matter the cost. It was time to fight back, and he would do it on his own terms. No more lies, no more deceit. It was time to expose the truth, redemption or destruction. The stars outside the ship's observation window flickered like distant promises of a future unknown. Captain Alex Mercer stood in the cockpit, the weight of everything he had learned pressing heavily on his chest. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with peril, deceit, and the looming presence of the Harbingers. But one thing was clear: humanity's fate rested on a knife's edge, and there was no going back. Alex had been forced to make a choice, one that would echo through the halls of history. He had rejected the lies of his own species, turned his back on the corrupt systems that had betrayed him, and placed his faith in an alien race he barely understood. And now, the galaxy was on the brink of something far worse than war. It was on the verge of unraveling itself. He turned to Liara, who stood silently by his side. The alien girl, once a symbol of humanity's enemy, had become his only ally. They had shared a journey fraught with conflict, loss, and hard truths. She was his only connection to the truth about the Harbingers, and the only hope humanity had left. But even now, as they prepared to face the greatest threat they would ever know, Alex couldn't shake the nagging question that haunted him. Would they survive this? Or would they be the last remnants of a doomed species? The hidden power of the seal. We have to go to Zilith. Liara's voice broke through his thoughts, her words filled with certainty. Alex looked at her, his brow furrowing. But we don't even know what we're up against yet. The Harbingers are everywhere. And they're not just machines. They're a force of nature, something far older and more powerful than we could ever imagine. What if we're just walking into their trap? Liara's gaze was unwavering. We have no choice. The seal that was broken, it's not just a barrier. It's a weapon, a tool to balance the universe. If we don't reach the Zilith homeworld, everything will be lost. The Harbingers are coming, and they won't stop until they've wiped out humanity completely. We have to seal the wound, or we'll be the ones who bring the destruction. Alex felt the weight of her words sink in. They had been running for so long, but the truth was undeniable. There was no escape. They couldn't outrun the Harbingers. They couldn't hide from the forces humanity had unleashed. The only option left was to fight. But to fight, they had to understand the enemy. And that meant returning to the heart of everything. We'll need more than just the two of us, Alex said, his voice low. There's no way we can take on the Harbingers alone, not with the fleet they control. And even if we reach the Zilith homeworld, who's to say the seal will still work? The people who put it there, the ones who created the Harbingers, they're long gone. Liara nodded slowly. I know, but we can't face this alone. If we're going to stop the Harbingers, we'll need an army, and we'll need to find the allies who can help us. You've made enemies, but you've also made friends. There are those out there who understand what's at stake. You just have to find them." Alex's mind raced. The reality was harsh. The enemies they had made were many, but Lyra was right. There were still those who believed in something greater than power and control. There were remnants of rebel factions, old allies, and disillusioned soldiers who might stand with him in this fight. But would they trust him? Could he bring them together against a common threat? The task ahead seemed impossible. The galaxy was fractured, divided by old wounds and broken alliances. But if there was any chance of survival, it rested on uniting those who still held to the values humanity had once stood for: courage, honor, and the belief in a future beyond the stars. A desperate alliance. The journey to the Zilith homeworld was long, fraught with dangers that Alex and Lyra hadn't expected. Along the way, they encountered resistance, rebel factions who had long since turned their backs on the corrupt governments of humanity, those who had seen the truth and rejected it. These were the people who had suffered the most during the war, the ones whose homes had been destroyed, whose families had been lost. But Alex had to make them see that this was no longer just a fight for power. This was the fight for survival. As they docked on an ancient outpost, one of the last remaining bases of the old resistance, Alex was met by a familiar face. Lieutenant Garrick, his old friend, the one who had betrayed him. But now, as Alex looked into his eyes, he saw something different: regret. There was no longer any trace of the confident soldier he once knew. In his place stood a man who had seen the truth. "I never thought it would come to this," Garrick said, his voice filled with remorse. "I thought we were doing the right thing. I thought we were protecting humanity. But now, I see it. The truth. You were right all along, Mercer. And I'm sorry." Alex's heart was heavy, torn between the need for vengeance and the knowledge that humanity's future rested on these fractured alliances. "I can't trust you, Garrick," he said, his voice cold. "Not after what you did. Not after everything." Garrick lowered his head. "I understand. But if you want to win this war, if you want to survive, you need me. We all need to work together. This isn't just about the Harbingers anymore. It's about stopping a force that's beyond anything we can comprehend." Alex stared at him for a long moment, weighing his options. There was no room for doubt now. If they were going to stop the Harbingers, if they were going to save humanity, they had to do it together. "Fine," Alex said, his voice hard. "But if you double-cross me again, I won't hesitate to make you a casualty of this war." Garrick nodded, and the two men shared an uneasy truce, bound by necessity rather than trust. The final confrontation. The journey to the Zilith homeworld was like stepping into the past, a place where time had long since stopped, where ancient ruins told stories of a civilization that had once thrived and now lay in ruins. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of foreboding, and as Alex and Lyra descended into the heart of the Zilith capital, the truth became undeniable. The seal was not just a barrier. It was a weapon of unimaginable power. It had been designed to keep the Harbingers at bay, to ensure that no force, no species, could ever rise to challenge the natural order of the galaxy. But the seal had been broken, and now the Harbingers were coming. As the group made their way to the central chamber where the seal was held, they were ambushed. A fleet of Harbinger ships appeared on the horizon, their dark, twisted forms blocking the light of the stars. The battle was upon them, and this time there was no escaping it. The truth was that they had no choice. The seal was their only hope, the last defense against the Harbingers. But to activate it, to restore balance, someone would have to make the ultimate sacrifice. The power required was beyond anything they had ever faced. Alex looked at Lyra, his heart heavy with the burden of what was to come. "This is it," he whispered. "We either end this or we let everything we fought for burn." Lyra's eyes were filled with resolve. "We end this, Alex. We finish it for the future of every living being. We are the last hope." And in that moment, Alex knew what he had to do. To save humanity, to save the galaxy, he would have to make the hardest choice of all. He would have to give everything, his life, his future, for the chance of survival. With one final look at Lara, Alex stepped forward, ready to face the consequences of his actions. The fate of the universe rested in his hands. The final battle had begun, and it was either redemption or destruction for humanity. The universe held its breath.